Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into Phoenix, Arizona, the side of the NFL owners' meetings where a lot's going on. You know all about it. Aaron Rodgers, Jets, Packers. Lay of the land, Pete. First of all, it is every bit as warm as it looks on the screen. Not that there's ever a bad time to go to Phoenix, but this is definitely the right time. And the trade talk is getting heated up as well. The Jets, Robert Saleh, and Joe Douglas both spoke already today. Brian Gutekunst speaks in, gosh, what time is it? About a little less than 2 hours, and we'll hear from Matt LaFleur tomorrow morning. Pete, the biggest, we talk about the trade talks heating up, but it's pretty ice cold right now. It kind of has a sense that it could be here for a while.
So, what was your sense from what Robert Saleh said?
The biggest thing he said was no hurry. He was asked a really good question about, and Packers fans, you're familiar with this, whether or not the Jets, when they get the trade done for Aaron Rodgers, want him to be part of the offseason program. That starts for NFL teams next month. And he was like, yeah, not really. Not really important. The reason being that Nathaniel Hackett's their offensive coordinator, and he knows Nathaniel Hackett very well. Obviously, he coached his last two MVP seasons. Robert Saleh said, if you have that rapport with an offensive coordinator, you don't really need to come in and learn the offense. You already know the offense. You know the offensive coordinator. So there's no urgency. There's no hurry. But the other thing that Robert Saleh importantly said was that he's sure that a trade will get done. He said he's a very positive, optimistic thinker. He doesn't doubt it will get done. But the question of when, Pete, could be here a while.
Yeah, and it could be 3 hours from now. The deal's done. The one thing is, we just can't trust anything that they say publicly. We just, like with Brian Gutekunst this afternoon, it's probably a mistake to read very much into it unless he said something really unexpected. I mean, the Jets everybody's posturing. We're all sick of the word leverage, but everybody's trying to play whatever leverage they have. So the leverage is I can wait, just like with the Packers, the leverage is I can wait. The Rodgers doesn't know the offense and he knows Hackett, but he hasn't played with any of these guys. And we saw last year.
Yeah.
Last year when they knew Rodgers wasn't going to come for the offseason program, I generally dismissed it because one, if he needs the time to recharge at his age and all the stress of the season to let that wear off, that's fine. And I thought Love really needed. They'd learn a lot and get a lot out of having Love be their quarterback for the offseason. Looking back, that was an overstatement. I think they probably could have used Rodgers because he had a new receiving score. Probably should have been around for some of the OTAs, at least a week of OTAs. Maybe two. The Jets need this guy to work with their receivers and their offense and their offensive linemen. They want him in as ASAP.
What's Jordan Love doing right now, or what has he recently been doing, and who has he been doing it with? He's been working out, going through drills with Christian Watson, with Aaron Jones. He's been building a rapport. So it's not just the playbook and schematics and what's here. It's chemistry. It's being able to, as Aaron Rodgers did for a long time with Devontae Adams, read body language. Know where a guy's going to be, when he's going to be there on the field. It's not just X's and O's and straight lines on a page. You have to translate that to the field.
I asked a scout about this a few weeks ago, and I said, is it that important to take part in those? It's just a few practices. And he said, it's not just the practices. It's just having these guys all together in the same place, in the same building, in the same meeting room. That's as important as the physical work, and the physical work matters too, but just being around each other. So, I think the Packers could have used like half participation from Rodgers last year. The Jets definitely could use full participation. And the Packers, the Packers need to get this. If this thing drags on, what if Rodgers changes his mind? What if he gets hurt?
He could always change his mind.
What if he gets hurt working out, and so the Jets won't trade for him? They cannot. That $59 million guaranteed. That's an absolute guarantee. They have to pay him that no matter what, as long as he shows up. They cannot get stuck with that contract. That would be an absolute catastrophe. So both of these, and the Jets they've made. This is their guy. They need this to happen. Both of these, I don't think either side has much of a leverage advantage. That's my take.
But they're both trying.
Oh yeah.
with all their urgency to create leverage. And that's the backdrop of this. The Jets badly need Aaron Rodgers to participate in their offseason program. I think that we can both agree on that. Why would Robert Saleh say, there's no hurry?
Yeah.
There's no urgency. It's leverage.
Yeah, that's what he needs. And this posturing, it's kind of funny because it's not like the Packers can't figure out that the Jets really, really want him there for the offseason. Of course the Packers know that. And it's not like the Jets don't know that the Packers have to get rid of that contract sooner or later. I mean, push comes to shove, the Packers are probably a little more able to wait, but man, I wouldn't want to go past the draft, and
No.
Too many things could happen to scuttle the deal, and then you're stuck with the contract. I'll be surprised if it doesn't happen before the draft. Not saying, maybe it won't, but I'd be surprised if it doesn't. Who knows? Like I said, maybe 2 hours from now, news breaks that the deal's done, or tomorrow, or Wednesday. They're all here, so. And I talked to some people who saw Gutekunst and coming out of a general manager's meeting, and like 10 feet behind him was Joe Douglas.
And the NFL, the annual GM's photo.
Yeah.
Joe Douglas standing right behind Brian Gutekunst. Let's pivot to what Brian Gutekunst, the Packers side of this, might have to say today. Jeffrey wants to know, what's your best guess as to what Gute says today about Rodgers' trade negotiations? My best guess, Jeffrey, is a whole lot of nothing. We're going to try like hell to make that not happen, but a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah,
you're more optimistic than me?
No, they're not going to want to do anything, because the more you say, the more you have a chance to upset somebody somewhere involved in this. So they're going to try to do as little damage as possible. I was going to say, Joe Douglas came out and said, we're not going after Lamar Jackson. That would be disingenuous to do it, because we're not, he's a great player, but we're, they're already committed to what they're doing. And so you could argue, well, God, you just gave away leverage. Well, they could change their mind tomorrow too. So what the public comments just have limited value.
What's the one thing you want to, if we're in this perfect world where Brian Gutekunst says, when you give him truth serum, just open up. Tell us your biggest and deepest secrets. What's the one thing that you would like to know?
Do you have to have the Jets' first-round pick this year free and clear? Like, not a flip-flop of 13 and 15, but do you have to have that 13th pick as yours, plus you get to keep 15? Is that a must? Which, if that's the case, then I think they're asking for too much. I wouldn't give that up either if I were the Jets. I would make the first-rounder conditional on Rodgers playing in 24, so that Packers wouldn't get that until either next year or 25.
I don't think at the end of the day that they're going to get a first-round pick that doesn't include conditions on it. But why not ask that right now? Because there's no deadline.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to ask for the moon. And if you don't get the moon, what's the saying, Peter?
You take the stratosphere.
I was going to say you land among the stars, but either way, why not ask that right now? There's no reason not to. So, yeah, it's going to be a hard asking price now, and then when deadlines approach, and the draft is the first, but it's likely to change. And like Robert Saleh said, he's very sure something's going to work out. And Antoine wants to know, at 39, not knowing how many years he'll play, is Rodgers really worth a first-round pick? Well,
I think that's a great, like, when all this started in the offseason, because you got to take into account that contract. The Jets, I think rightly, think that they should give up less because they're taking this huge contract off the Packers' hands. And so I get it when the offseason started, and right before I called some scouts, I went into these calls I called 4 scouts. What do you think they get? My thought was 2 2s. And all the scouts said a 1, and then 3 of them said a 1+, anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on which guy it was. So I don't think it's a given, but, the Jets do want this guy bad enough. I think my guess is the Packers end up with a 1, but it's not till, 24 or 25, assuming Rodgers plays at least 2 years for him.
And you know why the asking price, while very possibly high right now, is likely to change? Because what do the Packers not want? Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and they,
there's mutual interest here. The Jets want Aaron Rodgers. The Packers don't. That's usually how things get done.
Oh yeah, and I get it for like next year a 1. Jets are they'll be good. With Rodgers as a quarterback, they got a really good team. They got a lot of talent. So you're talking picking in the 20s, very possibly the late 20s. If everything just goes ridiculously well, you're in the 30s for that first round pick. And that 13th pick, that's really high. Was Rashawn Gary? Was he 12 or 13? He was one
I
of
think
those.
he was 12.
He was 12.
So.
That's a good high pick. Find the Jets. I mean, one of the scenarios that I've been wondering about is maybe a small part of the deal is you flip flop 13 and 15.
Mm-hmm. Which is about a 4th round pick.
Say it's somewhere in that vicinity
on the point system.
Yeah.
Michael, good question from Michael, wants to know: do you think Green Bay would agree to all of the Jets' 2nd round picks? They obviously just got another 2nd round pick for trading Elijah Moore. Is that enough? Like when
so
that
like
happened,
42 and 43, I think it is.
Yeah,
does that
back
sound
to
right?
back. Those are that's premium. That's a good landscape there.
So one of the things I asked one of those scouts is which is more valuable, a 1 or 2 2s, and he said a 1.
Oh yeah, there's no question.
So,
but again, I go back to I don't think this trade happens without at least a condition on any 1st round pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was no 1st round pick because the Packers they want to move forward with Jordan Love. The Jets know that.
I'm thinking this is like we're all just taking wild guesses. The deal could be announced in 2 hours, and it's both of those.
Wouldn't that be something?
Both of those 2s are the Packers. My guess is one of the reasons the Jets wanted to get that second rounder was they could trade one of them, and now still have a 2nd round pick. So I think it's more likely one of those is part of the deal than both.
Linda wants to know: is there any possibility a player comes with the trade, and if so, who? I think there's definitely a possibility for no other reason than cap.
I think that makes it less likely because the Packers have 0 cap room. I mean, they got nothing.
That's true.
Let's talk who's the receiver, Corey Davis.
Yeah,
$10.5 million. Even if you rework this deal, I mean, the best you could cut it down to is going to be a $3 million cap or $4 million cap. I mean, that's for how little room they have and how generally little room for maneuvering they have. That looks like a non-starter to me unless you're going to start cutting starters.
The Jets don't have a lot of cap room, though.
They don't, but they do.
Not that they're going to get rid of a Corey Davis type figure.
They have numerous ways to create more cap room, though.
Have you looked at how much they can restructure? Because the Packers are darn near maxed out.
Yeah, the Packers are almost maxed out. Well, the Jets, they can restructure with Corey Davis amongst other things. So they're, the Jets have a lot more flexibility. They could turn around. They could cut Corey Davis if they really wanted to. I mean,
Matt wants to know how much did Rodgers' appearance on the McAfee show affect the trade negotiations? Was it better for the Packers or the Jets?
When it's all, I don't think it affected anything. To be honest with you, I could be wrong. I think both of these teams know where their leverage lies, and where the other guys. What's the impulse? I mean, the thing the Packers have going for them is Woody Johnson really wanted this guy, and in the end, the owner's going to get what he wants. So that's the Packers' leverage, and the Jets' leverage is the Packers have to unload this contract. And that's why it's just almost impossible to believe a deal won't get done. And like I said, I mean, if I were betting, I'd bet before the draft, and, maybe it's this week. Who knows?
I think it embarrassed the Packers. I think it was awfully embarrassing to have your quarterback of 18 years, a guy that you still own the contractual rights to, come out and just wipe the floor with you, but I don't think it affected.
Yeah, and there's been an element of that for the last how many years have you been doing that show? 3?
Too many?
Yeah, there's been an element of that on a lot of weeks, which is another reason they probably are inclined to move on. All the big thing is get rid of the contract, and you do it if you think Jordan Love at least has a chance to be good. Both of those things happen.
Josh wants to know, worst case scenario, what is the Jets and Packers straight talk breakdown? Do the Packers open up to other teams? Would they welcome them back? Worst case scenario.
Sure doesn't sound like any other teams are interested, or they would have already been involved. Rodgers does have say in this, because
he does.
The thing he can do is he could say, another team gets involved, they want to do the trade, and then he could say to them, I'm not playing for you. I'm going to retire. So then he says he's retiring.
He's not retiring.
No, but he could say that.
He could say it, but
and then
you think teams believe that?
No, let me finish then. So he says I'm retiring, and then he just doesn't do anything. And then on July 30th or August 15th, he says the Packers, I'm playing this year.
Here's the question.
So then he shows up, and the Packers own $59 million.
Here's the question I have in my head, though. He says he's retiring. You think teams actually believe that? Because nobody thinks he's retiring.
No, but it would just be like you heard the reasoning there. He could force himself onto the Packers because when he says in July or if he says August 20th, I'm coming. Whoever was doing the trade, they're not doing the trade now. They're not having him for camp. They're probably pulling out of the deal.
Which is why what Robert Saleh said today
that's why Rodgers. The whole point of that is that's why Rodgers has a say in where he ends up. So it sure seems like, I mean, you never know. There could be somebody that comes into this out of the blue. Worst case scenario is Rodgers gets hurt before they get a deal done, and the Jets say, well, he's damaged goods now. We don't want him. And then the Packers have to pay him $59 million.
Watch out for that COVID toe. Paul wants to know what type of offensive players to add in the draft best helps Jordan Love. Wide receivers, Flowers, type of tight end, maybe a running back. Well, running back's one position I can tell you they're not going to draft certainly high. I mean, a third running back late in the draft, maybe, but that's a young quarterback's best friend is Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So they got to have a tight end, though, Pete. I mean,
they do.
Goodness.
They really, and they need another receiver, too. They're going to, I would think those would be really good candidates for drafting anywhere from the first to the third round. Tight end, receiver. I think they need a pass rusher, something fierce. Defensive line, they can use help. I mean, they need obviously safety. They need going to need at least one, maybe two starting safeties. So yeah, they have huge needs on offense. They need two good skill guys.
You were here for this, but when Ted Thompson pivoted in 2008 to Aaron Rodgers, he did two things. He drafted Brian Brom in the second round, so they very well could draft a quarterback this year. I don't think that's would be a surprise at all. And he loaded up at skill positions. Now, I know Jordy Nelson was 2007, the year before, but they had an idea that they might be transitioning at some point.
He was
Michael Finley.
He was preemptive with all of that, but he drafted some needs. He did it a year ahead of time for several years there, including the Nelson pick was clearly a receiver pick for the year. Like he was thinking 1 or 2 years down the road.
And you could argue that Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs were awfully preemptive as well. Now,
although they needed those guys. Those were for the here and now too. Yeah. They needed both those guys last year.
John wants to know: are we going to trade a draft pick for a wide receiver? I would say no.
I would say no. Also, I think they'd rather have the guy as a rookie and have a guy grow with the quarterback over a 2 or 3 year period rather than trade for a guy who's got only maybe 2 years left on his contract, and then you gotta pony up and pay him a lot of money. So my guess is no, unless they could get somebody for like a 5th round pick. But like I said, the cap too is an issue. So if the guy's on his rookie contract, if the receiver's on his rookie contract, then he'll be cheap.
The thing I go back to is that the exit interview for Brian Gutekunst right after the season saying that they want a veteran in that room. Well, Randall Cobb's not going to be the guy. We know now that Allen Lazard's not going to be that guy. They don't have the cap for it. Who do they get? I think that it's much more likely that they go get another young talented guy in the draft, and they have a core now of 3 that they can build around going forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm skeptical they can find a third guy who would be just a for sure starter, because again, we're talking minimum wage or close to it. They're gonna have to pay more than that to get a guy who would come in and be their third guy. It'll be really interesting.
Which is why I think the draft is much more.
Yeah. So if they take a receiver in the first couple rounds, I mean, it's tough for young receivers to play right off the bat, but there's a chance that by like November, their third receiver is a rookie. I mean, we saw it this year. Both, if they got somebody the quality of Dobbs or Watson, that'll be hard. But even somebody the quality of Dobbs, that would help them because you wouldn't have to. I mean, last year there were games where you're going in, you're thinking Dobbs is their best guy.
I think why it's important. If Brian Gutekunst has learned nothing else about the receiver position post Devontae Adams trade, it's that you can't leave that cupboard bare. You've got to continue to stock that cupboard for your quarterback. So I would think that's, while tight end is a much bigger need, I would think receiver is certainly an area they'll look. Matt wants to know, will they stick with Danny Etling as QB2 or draft a QB or sign a free agent?
So here's an interesting thing. Sean McDermott was talking about having a young quarterback, and he was basically saying Josh Allen's old enough now where he doesn't need a veteran. But he said, I thought he put it great. The quarterback, it's such a unique position, and you go into the meeting room, and there's only like 3 people in there. And, if things go bad for a couple of weeks, he said that can be a really lonely place. And it's really good for a very young quarterback to have a guy who's played a bunch of years you can say, hey, look, it's going to be okay. This, and this. Just a guy to guide him through it.
Mm-hmm.
There's really something to be said for that. Now, they didn't do that for Rodgers because I think Brom and Flynn were their 2 and 3. So they had 2 rookie quarterbacks and a first-year starter. I would think that they would want to get, even if the guy is just a minimum wage guy, a veteran quarterback who's been in the league for at least 4 or 5 years, and if it's 10 years better, just as a guy to have in the meeting room to help this guy.
Here's the other part of that. Jordan Love could get hurt, and you want a guy that, have an idea that can play in the league, whether that's 2 weeks, whether that's half the season. You want to backup quarterbacks like vice president. You're 1 heartbeat away. So I would think that in all likelihood they go veteran, but the question is who.
Yeah, I would guess it'll be a minimum wage or damn near minimum wage guy. So we're not talking, a guy anybody other teams want. It'll be somebody who's just been around. It's like having another coach in the room, except the guy's a player, not a coach. So, it's just better to have it some messages to come from players rather than coaches.
Excellent clipboard holder. Put that on the job resume. Nick wants to know, it's Gute we are talking about here. No matter how bad we need offense, he will probably draft defense first round. And Nick, I'm sure that you'll just be pom-pomming the hell out of that, right? You'll be very, very excited for another defensive first round pick.
The thing is, I still think, and I might be the only person walking the planet that thinks this, I think pass rusher is their biggest need. Because I don't think you can play really good defense in this league unless
it's his fault. He said it.
Unless you have a really good pass rush. Now, is there a rusher worth taking when they pick at 15? That sounds really debatable and maybe unlikely, but you never know. The guy from Iowa might be there. The guy from Georgia who ran the ridiculous 40 time, he might be there. So I don't know. I don't know if he would actually do it or not, but man, this game, pass rushers win games. I would be really tempted to take one if there was somebody you really like there.
Pete, you know how much I hate playing devil's advocate with you. And for the record, I'm not saying you're wrong, because pass rushers win games in this league. You cannot ever have enough. But if you're transitioning to a first-year starting quarterback and you want to make life as good for him as possible, how does a pass rusher facilitate that more than having an actual tight end on the roster?
It doesn't. You would do that only if you felt really good about getting receiver slash tight end or both with your next 2 picks after that. Like if it's shaky, because this is a deeper drafted tight end, right? Like legit guys. But if they're out of reach when you're picking in the second round, it's where maybe if you're picking at 42, maybe you have a crack at one of those guys if you get that as part of the deal.
That's the thing always with the draft. When does the position runs happen? Yeah. And every year, every GM has to be attuned to that with their roster needs. When are the runs likely to happen? If they go pass rush at 15, or if you get a pick swap or something, get that 13th pick, and he turns into Rashawn Gary, it's a hell of a pick. No issue with that at all. I could very well see them, though, going offense early, because you want to make Jordan Love's life as easy as possible. And they got a lot of work to do to be able to do that from the skill position. They got the offensive line. They've got the running back. They've got to get more skilled players.
There's that school of thought that I've seen. You've probably seen it too, and I can't say I 100% disagree with it. Is this could easily be Bakhtiari's last season.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or right tackle too.
So
offensive line.
So do you take a tackle? You don't get to pick up there very often, and those are lower risk picks generally. Taking offensive linemen, not taking a tackle up there. Because whatever they do in the draft this year, they're not thinking just like if it were Rodgers, they'd be thinking mostly about this upcoming season if Rodgers was still their quarterback. But with Love,
Yeah.
they're thinking a couple years down
There's
the
a window.
road. I think that opens the door to almost anything. But I mean, I agree completely. They got to come out of this with a tight end and a receiver. I just don't see, with pretty high picks, I don't see how they don't.
Yeah, not just names on a roster, on a depth chart. They need actual players, guys that can make impact there. Dean wants to know, the tight end class is so deep. Do you see Gutekunst possibly doubling down on a tight end in the draft, considering our lack of depth? Yes. That would not shock me at all. Pete, you?
I'm drafting one?
I'm drafting two.
I'm drafting two. Yeah, I would, assume the second one would be round 5 or later, but sure, of course.
Yeah, they need tight ends. Let's just put it that way. No
it's funny.
parameters on that.
I think back, I mean, what don't they need? Almost, and this is way every year. There's like one or two positions that are low priority, and everything else is, they could use that,
They need right tackle and left tackle insurance, and maybe center competition on offensive line. They need a third running back. They need another receiver. They need at least one, probably two tight ends. They need at least one, probably two safeties.
So if they move, let's say they move,
go down the roster.
Let's say they're moving Douglas to safety, which they never tell us this stuff in the offseason. They make us wait till OTAs to see it. But let's say they move Douglas to safety. So what if there's a corner at 15 who you really like?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
wouldn't surprise me at all. Just make sure it's
yeah.
not Demarius Randall again. Linebacker, they don't need linebacker.
Inside linebacker, and I still think taking a tackle would be a luxury, but I mean, there are other pundits and people you see who they think it's a real possibility. I still think it's a little too much of a luxury, and I also wonder what they think of what they have in Walker, and who am I thinking of? The undrafted guy who made it last year, a really tall guy, Caleb Jones. I wonder what they think they have in those two guys.
It's a good question. You know what they don't need? Kick returner.
No,
Your 2023 Green Bay Packers, they do not need a kick returner.
Yeah, I know.
How about that?
I wonder when the last time that was probably 2011, 2012 when they had Cobb, and he was young, so they were going to use him in that because he wasn't starting at receiver.
Levi wants to know, Stokes better bounce back. They can't take yet another DB round 1. Well, they could, for the exact same scenario that Pete just laid out. And frankly, you can never have enough good corners. But, Eric Stokes needs to get over his sophomore slump really quick.
Yeah, that was it was weird. Last year at this time, I was thinking that his draft was looking, it's a pretty promising draft. Right now, it's looking, and a year from now, it might be looking good again. Who knows?
Christian wants to know, post-June 1st trade for Rodgers for cap reasons. No, not if they can come to any type of compromise before the draft. They want that 2023 draft pick and start the rebuild now. But an interesting, this is different, but June 1st, it changes the cap ramifications. It's not a deadline. It's not that there's no spur to action from June 1st. The spur to action is week 1 if they get past the draft, because that's when the $58.3 million option bonus is due. That's when you pay it. But June 1st doesn't actually change anything like, it's June 1st now a trade's going to happen. No, it just changes the cap ramifications.
I'm thinking they'd rather take the hit now and get it over with.
Yes.
Rather than carry over the money, some money into 24, that dead money from Rodgers to 24. I think they'd rather just get it over. If I were them, I'd rather get it over with now.
If I was me, also, for our purposes, Pete, let's just have them get it over with now. I think we'd both be okay.
I still think if I had to bet, $500 of my own money, and you could either say before the draft or after, I would say I would put the money down on before. Not that it's just anything like a sure thing, but that would just be my best guess.
That was just a question up on the screen. I didn't see the name. Levi again. Edge rusher at 15 would be smart. Levi's a fan of yours.
I'm with you, Levi.
You've got a supporter there, Peter.
Maybe he emailed me and told me that's what they should do, and I thought, you know what, you're right.
Oh, so you got the idea from Levi.
I did.
Okay. Good job, Levi. I don't know how a lot of Packers fans would react to that, but Levi
No,
would be a fan.
I don't think Levi's ever emailed me. I don't think, but he's on these all the time. So good to see you, Levi.
That's a good place for us to stop. We've got Brian Gutekunst coming up shortly, and we'll see what we can pry out of the Packers GM. Predictions,
Yeah.
Peter?
Well, considering that he just had a sit down with the local media at the combine, the scouting combine, what was that about?
A month
A
ago.
month ago. I don't think there'll be a lot new here, but you never know. And, we'll certainly fire a half hour's worth of questions at him.
Thank you for everyone for joining along. Sorry if we didn't get to your questions. Pete, might as well try to do this again tomorrow if we have time. We'll get back to you on that, but we really appreciate you guys following along. Make sure you stay to Packers news throughout, not just today, tomorrow, for wall-to-wall coverage. And as you know, the moment something happens, if it's in 2 hours, if it's in 2 months, hopefully more like 2 hours, we'll have it there as well. So until then, he's Pete. I'm Ryan. Take care, everyone.